Spring 1221. The capital of one of the largest empires on earth is underwater. The chroniclers say that when the killing was done, the Mongols broke the dams and let the river bury what the fire had missed. A capital drowned. 2 years earlier, the Khwarezmian Empire was bigger than Western Europe. And Genghis Khan didn't just defeat it, he deleted it. What could anyone possibly do to convince the most dangerous man alive that an empire should stop existing? It began not with an invasion, but an insult. Rewind to 1218, the border city of Otrar. A trade caravan sways out of the desert. The chroniclers count 450 merchants, 500 camels loaded with silver, silk and furs, sponsored by Genghis Khan himself. The most feared conqueror alive had asked this empire for trade. Twice. The caravan was the handshake. The governor of Otrar, a man named Inalchuk, looked at all that wealth and declared the merchants spies. He arrested the caravan, then he slaughtered it. One camel driver escaped and carried the news east. Whether the Shah secretly ordered it or the governor simply got greedy, historians still argue. What happened next, nobody disputes. Genghis Khan did not send an army, he sent 3 men. 1 Muslim envoy, 2 Mongol escorts, and a single demand: hand over the governor. The Shah, Muhammad II, gave his answer. He executed the envoy, then he shaved the beards of the 2 escorts and sent them home. In both their worlds, a calculated humiliation. This was no longer an insult, it was a death sentence. The Shah just didn't know whose. In 1219, the Mongols came. Chroniclers imagined 800,000 riders. The real number was closer to 100,000, plus something new: Chinese siege engineers who knew how to crack cities open. On paper, the Shah could match those numbers, maybe beat them. That detail should have saved Khwarezm. Instead, he refused to fight in the open field. He split his armies into garrisons, 1 per city, and locked the gates. He turned his empire into a row of separate targets. All the Mongols had to do was go down the line. The countdown had started. Khwarezm had 2 years left. The army split into columns. 2 of Genghis's sons settled in to strangle Otrar. Another swept down the Seer Darya River. And Genghis himself, with his youngest son, Tolui, simply vanished. One February dawn in 1220, watchmen on the walls of Bukhara saw a dust column rising from the Kizil Kum desert. 300 miles of red sand every general called impassable. Genghis Khan had crossed it in winter. The deadliest army on earth was standing at the empire's back door, and every fortress guarding the front was now behind it. The outer city of Bukhara surrendered in 3 days. Juvayni, a Persian historian writing a generation later, tells what happened next. Remember his name. Genghis rode his horse into the Friday mosque courtyard and asked if it was the Sultan's palace. Chests of core ahz were dumped out as feed troughs for horses. The Khan, the story goes, told the city, "I am the punishment of God." Juvayni was writing 30 years later. Nobody was taking transcripts, but the city of wood burned to the ground, all but 1 brick minaret, still standing today. A survivor gave Juvayni the whole war in 1 line. They came, they burnt, they slew, they plundered, and they departed. That same month, Otrar, where it all began, finally cracked. Weeks later, Inalchuk was dragged out of his citadel alive. The story spread that Genghis had molten silver poured into his eyes and ears. Probably a legend, but the whole world believed it, and that belief was already a weapon. A month later came Samarkand, the fortress everyone said would hold for a year. It fell in days. The garrison surrendered and was executed anyway. 30,000 craftsmen, the chroniclers claim, were marched east in chains. The Mongols deleted cities, craftsmen they kept, and the Shah, the man whose pride lit this fire, looked at his collapsing empire and ran. 13 months left, and here it stops being a war and becomes a hunt. Genghis detached his 2 best generals, Jie Bey and Subutai, with 1 mission: bring me the Shah. They chased him across the width of Persia until December 1220, when the most powerful man of his age died on a small island in the Caspian Sea, sick and penniless. The chroniclers say he was buried in a torn shirt. No one could find a shroud for the Emperor of the East, and that should be the end. The insult avenged, the Shah dead, the war won. Instead, the Mongols did not stop. Genghis was no longer hunting a man. He was erasing a civilization. The capital, Gurganj, resisted longest, months of siege, then fighting street by street. There were no stones on that plain, so the catapults hurled soaked mulberry wood. The Mongols drove captured civilians ahead of every assault, prisoners filling the moats of their own cities, absorbing arrows meant for Mongols. When Gurganj fell in April 1221, Juvayni claims every Mongol soldier was ordered to execute 24 citizens. Arithmetic that passes 1 million dead. Modern historians reject it. The city couldn't hold a fraction of that. But the survivors were not counting. They were telling you the loss was too big to count. And then, the chroniclers say, the Mongols broke the dams and the river swallowed the capital of Khwarezm. 0. The south had already gone darker. While Gurganj still fought, Tohlui was tearing through Khorasan. Merv surrendered on terms in February 1221 and was massacred anyway. At Nishapur, one arrow doomed a city. A defender on the wall had shot dead Toch Kuchar, Genghis Khan's own son-in-law. When the Mongols returned in April, fruit blossom season, every offer of surrender was refused. The walls were breached in a single day. The chroniclers say the dead were stacked into pyramids of heads and that the Khan's widowed daughter rode in to watch. Details written decades later treat them carefully, and the verified part is worse. The Mongols deliberately spared a handful of scribes and told them to go describe what they had seen. The terror wasn't a byproduct, it was the broadcast, which leaves the strangest question of all. If this empire was deleted, how do we know every detail? Hold that thought. One man refused the script. Jalal al-Din, the Shah's son, rallied the survivors and handed the Mongols their only real defeat of the war. So Genghis came for him personally. In November 1221, on the banks of the Indus, the last army of Khwarezm was pinned against the water and destroyed. Jalal al-Din threw off his armor, spurred his horse off a bank as high as a house, and swam for the far shore. Genghis, the story goes, held his archer's fire and told his sons. Fortunate is the father of such a son. He could afford the compliment. The empire that Prince was fighting for no longer existed. From insult to erasure, about 2 years. The dead are beyond counting. Modern estimates run from 2 million to 15. The shattered canals starved the land for generations. Jalal al-Din ran as a fugitive king until he was murdered in 1231, and the dynasty died with him. So, was it deleted? The state, yes. The capital drowned. The map redrawn. Here is the answer Genghis Khan himself might have savored. We know every detail because the survivors wrote it down. Ibn al-Athir, a contemporary who confessed he spent years unable to record a calamity this size, and Juvayni, the man behind half these scenes, who worked for the Mongol Empire itself. The Mongols never buried this story. They amplified it, terrifying numbers and all. Fear was cheaper than sieges. Genghis Khan deleted this empire from the map, from the tax rolls, from the future, and then turned its ghost into a weapon. He never deleted the story, he published it. One caravan, one greedy governor, one shaved beard. A desert crossed at dawn, a mosque full of horses. A river sent to bury a capital. One rider leaping into the Indus, carrying the last of Khwarezm across the water. And an empire bigger than Western Europe, gone in about 2 years because one man mistook a handshake for a threat. If stories like this one stay with you, subscribe. There's a new one every week. Next time, 5,000 Roman soldiers march into the fog of northern Britain and never march out. The lost 9th Legion. This has been The Drawn Past.